A 17-year-old throws a house party with 60 teenagers dancing, drinking, and having the time of their lives. The music is pumping, kids are playing beer pong, and everyone's having a blast. But what they don't know is that just down the hallway behind a locked bedroom door lie the bloodied corpses of the host's parents, murdered just hours before the party began. And the killer? He's right there among them, laughing and celebrating his freedom. This isn't fiction. This actually happened. And Tyler Hadley isn't the only child who committed acts so heinous, so calculated, that they defy everything we think we know about childhood innocence. Today, we're diving into 5 cases that will challenge your understanding of human nature itself. These aren't teenagers who made mistakes or got caught up in bad situations. These are children who planned, executed, and sometimes even enjoyed taking human lives. Fair warning, these stories contain disturbing details that might stay with you long after this video ends. Let's start with Tyler Hadley, the 17-year-old from Port St. Lucie, Florida, whose story opened our video. July 16, 2011 started like any other summer day, but it would end in unthinkable horror. Tyler had been getting into trouble lately, and his parents, Mary Jo and Blake Hadley, were cracking down hard. No parties, no freedom, just strict supervision. But Tyler had other plans. Around 5 p.m., several hours before his planned party, Tyler took some ecstasy and made a decision that would destroy multiple families forever. He grabbed a hammer from the garage and walked into the family room where his mother, Mary Jo, sat working at the computer. Without warning, without argument, Tyler struck her on the head. When his father Blake rushed in at the sound of screaming, Tyler's only explanation was chilling. Why the hell not? Tyler bludgeoned both parents to death, dragged their bodies to the master bedroom, and spent 3 hours covering them with clothes and furniture. He locked the door, cleaned up the blood well, most of it, and prepared for his party. By 11 p.m., nearly 60 teenagers packed the Hadley house. They played beer pong, smoked cigarettes, broke bottles, and trashed the place. Some sat at the family computer, taking turns playing YouTube videos. Many noticed a brown, sticky substance on various surfaces, assuming it was spilled soda or beer. It was actually Mary Jo's blood that Tyler had tried to clean with coffee granules. Throughout the night, Tyler's behavior swung wildly between panic and euphoria. At one point, he pulled his best friend aside and confessed everything, even showing him a bloody footprint in the garage before revealing his parents' bodies in the bedroom. The party raged on until 4:40 a.m. when police arrived. Tyler's friend Michael Mandel had called Crime Stoppers, unable to live with the secret. Tyler was arrested as dozens of teenagers realized they'd been celebrating just feet away from a double murder scene. Tyler's explanations kept changing, first blaming medications, then claiming his father wasn't really his biological dad and was abusive. None of this was true. Finally, he admitted the real reason. He wanted to throw a party and his parents would have said no. Tyler Hadley was sentenced to life without parole, though recent Supreme Court rulings may affect his case. But the image of those 60 kids partying while 2 bodies decomposed nearby remains one of the most disturbing crime scenes in modern history. 14-year-old Joshua Phillips seemed like any other kid in his neighborhood. No history of violence, no red flags, just a regular teenager who occasionally played with the younger kids on his street. But on November 3, 1998, something inside him snapped in the most horrific way possible. 8-year-old Maddie Clifton lived right across the street from Joshua. That afternoon, she came over and asked him to play baseball in his backyard. It started innocently enough. Maddie threw the ball, Joshua hit it back. But the ball struck Maddie in the eye, causing her to bleed. Joshua panicked, but not for the reason you'd expect. His father had an ironclad rule about no visitors in the house, and Joshua knew the consequences of disobedience were severe. His father was notoriously abusive, and Joshua lived in constant fear of triggering his rage. Instead of helping Maddie or calling for an adult, Joshua made a decision that defies comprehension. He dragged the bleeding girl into his bedroom and strangled her with a phone cord for 15 agonizing minutes. When she was unconscious but still breathing, he grabbed his baseball bat and beat her. Then he stabbed her 11 times to make sure she was dead. Joshua stuffed Maddie's body underneath his waterbed mattress, where it remained for an entire week. Every night, he slept just feet above her decomposing corpse. Every morning he got up, got dressed, and went to school as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, the entire community was searching for Maddie. Police organized massive search parties, volunteers combed through dumpsters and woods, and Maddie's frantic parents pleaded for information. The whole time she was less than 100 feet from her own front door. 7 days later, Joshua's mother Missy was cleaning his room when she noticed a wet spot on the floor. Thinking his waterbed was leaking, she lifted the mattress to find the source. Instead, she discovered Maddie's decomposed body. Missy ran screaming to the neighbors and called police. Joshua was arrested at school that same day. During interrogation, he calmly explained his reasoning. He was afraid of what his father would do if he found out about the visitor. Joshua Phillips was tried as an adult and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was just 15 years old at sentencing, making him one of the youngest people ever to receive such a harsh sentence. 13-year-old Eric Smith looked like he belonged in a Norman Rockwell painting. With his thick aviator glasses, tousled red hair, and face full of freckles, he was the picture of an all-American kid. But beneath that innocent exterior lurked something truly sinister. Eric had always been different. As a toddler, he threw violent tantrums, banging his head on the floor for no apparent reason. He was later diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder, a condition that made him unpredictably violent. School bullies made his life miserable, turning an already troubled child into a ticking time bomb. On August 2, 1993, that bomb finally exploded. 4-year-old Derek Roby was walking to summer camp at a nearby park, just 2 blocks from home with no streets to cross. It should have been the safest journey in the world. But Eric Smith was lurking in the neighborhood, and when he spotted Derek walking alone, he saw an opportunity. Eric approached Derek and told him he knew a shortcut through the woods. The trusting 4-year-old followed. Once they were hidden from view, Eric's mask of normalcy dropped completely. Without warning, he began strangling Derek with his bare hands until the little boy collapsed unconscious. But Eric wasn't finished. He picked up 2 large rocks and smashed them into Derek's head, killing him instantly. Then, in acts so depraved they shocked even hardened investigators, Eric undressed the boy's body and sexually assaulted him with a tree branch. He rifled through Derek's lunch bag, smashed his banana, and poured red Kool-Aid over his mutilated face. When Derek didn't arrive at camp, his mother Doreen went looking for him. A massive search operation began, but it took 4 days to find Derek's body in the woods. Here's where Eric's behavior becomes even more chilling. On the 7th day, he walked into the police station and offered to help with the case. He asked questions and provided information with what investigators later described as barely contained glee. They initially thought he was just a kid who wanted to play detective. But Eric made crucial mistakes. He mentioned seeing Derek across the street in an open field, which placed him at the crime scene. He also perfectly described Derek's clothes and the lunch bag he was carrying, details that hadn't been released to the public. 7 days after the murder, Eric confessed. He showed no remorse, no emotion beyond a strange excitement at being the center of attention. He was sentenced to 9 years to life, with parole eligibility every 2 years after the first 9. Eric has been denied parole at every hearing and remains incarcerated today, over 30 years later. Parole boards consistently cite his lack of genuine remorse and the calculated brutality of his crime as reasons for denial. Christopher Pitman's case raises disturbing questions about the pharmaceutical industry and the treatment of troubled children. In 2001, 12-year-old Christopher was already struggling with behavioral problems when he decided to run away from home. After being caught, he was placed in an institutional facility and prescribed Paxil, an antidepressant. When Christopher went to live with his grandparents in a new town, his new doctor made a fateful decision. Paxil wasn't available, so he switched Christopher to Zoloft instead. The change would have deadly consequences. Zoloft is known to cause severe side effects in children, including aggression, hallucinations, depression, and delusions. Christopher began experiencing all of these, plus a burning sensation all over his body that was so severe he needed additional pain medication. Instead of recognizing these dangerous side effects, Christopher's doctor doubled his Zoloft dosage from 100 milligrams to 200 milligrams daily. Christopher's behavior became increasingly erratic. He choked a fellow student on the school bus after an argument. He disrupted church services. His anger was spiraling out of control. The breaking point came after Christopher got into a fight with his grandfather and was spanked. Enraged and chemically altered by the medication, Christopher retrieved the shotgun his grandfather had taught him to use. He walked into his grandparents' bedroom and shot them both dead while they slept. But Christopher wasn't finished. He used paper and candles to set the house on fire, attempting to destroy the evidence. He took his grandparents' car, their guns, their dog, and $33 in cash and fled into the night. When police picked him up, Christopher initially claimed he'd been kidnapped by a man who killed his grandparents. Under intense questioning, he eventually confessed, adding coldly that his grandparents deserved what they got. Christopher's trial became a battleground over the effects of antidepressants on children. His defense argued that the Zoloft had essentially turned him into a different person, chemically incapable of controlling his actions. The prosecution countered that medication doesn't excuse murder. The doctor who doubled Christopher's dosage was never charged with any crime, despite the clear connection between the medication increase and the violent behavior. Christopher Pitman was sentenced to 30 years to life and remains incarcerated today. 15-year-old Cindy Collier and 14-year-old Shirley Wolfe had endured horrific childhoods that would break most adults. Cindy had been abused her entire life and raped before she turned 10. By 15, her criminal record included theft, burglary, drug abuse, and assault. Shirley's story was equally tragic. Her father, uncle, and paternal grandfather had sexually abused her since infancy. By age 6, she was running away from home repeatedly until authorities finally took notice and arrested her father. She was shuffled between foster homes and detention centers, never finding stability or safety. The two girls met at a bus stop and bonded instantly over their shared trauma. After knowing each other for just 8 hours, they decided to run away together. But their plan was far more sinister than simple escape. They decided they needed to kill someone and steal their car. In a feeble attempt at disguise, both girls dyed their hair and began walking through Auburn Greens, California, knocking on doors. Most residents refused to let them in, sensing something wasn't right. But 85-year-old Anna Brackett, a grandmother with her own grandchildren, took took pity on them and invited them inside. The girls asked to use the phone and chatted with Anna for about an hour. She was kind to them, probably reminding them of the grandmother figures they'd never had. But when Anna's son called to say he was coming to drive her to bingo, the girls knew their time was up. Without warning, Cindy grabbed a knife and tossed it to Shirley, who immediately began stabbing Anna in the back repeatedly. The elderly woman begged for her life, pleading with the girls to stop, but they continued until she was dead. After the murder, they ransacked the house looking for cash and car keys. They grabbed 2 keys from the counter, but unfortunately for them, they were the wrong keys for Anna's 1970 Dodge in the garage. The girls fled on foot toward Highway 49. In a cruel twist of fate, Anna's son Carl Brackett actually saw the 2 girls while driving to his mother's house. When he arrived and discovered the grisly scene, he was able to provide police with descriptions of the suspects he'd unknowingly passed on the road. When confronted by police, Shirley immediately confessed to the crime. Cindy remained silent during initial questioning, but when confronted with Shirley's confession, her reaction was chilling. She began to laugh. "To honestly tell you the truth," Cindy said, "we didn't feel any badness. Then after we did it, we wanted to do another one. We just wanted to kill someone just for fun." Both girls were convicted. Cindy served the maximum juvenile sentence of 9 years and was paroled in 1992. She has had no further run-ins with the law and has apparently managed to build a normal life. Shirley was freed in 1995 but has been arrested several times since for various petty crimes. These 5 cases force us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature, childhood trauma, and the capacity for evil. Were these children born broken, or did their circumstances create monsters? Can a 13-year-old truly understand the permanence of murder? Should children ever be sentenced to life without parole? The answers aren't simple. Eric Smith's case suggests some children may indeed be born with dangerous psychological defects. Christopher Pitman's story highlights the potential dangers of medicating troubled children without fully understanding the consequences. Joshua Phillips shows how abuse can create cycles of violence that destroy innocent lives. Cindy and Shirley's case demonstrates how severe childhood trauma can strip away empathy and moral reasoning. And Tyler Hadley's story reveals how a desire for social acceptance can drive someone to the ultimate act of rebellion. What's certain is that these weren't momentary lapses in judgment or crimes of passion. These were calculated, brutal acts committed by children who understood right from wrong but chose wrong anyway. They remind us that evil doesn't wait until adulthood to emerge, and that sometimes the most innocent faces hide the darkest secrets. The victims, Derek Roby, Maddie Clifton, Mary Jo and Blake Hadley, Christopher's grandparents, and Anna Brackett, were all just living their normal lives when they encountered these young killers. Their stories serve as reminders that evil can strike anywhere, anytime, and sometimes from the most unexpected sources. These cases continue to haunt investigators, families, and communities decades later. They challenge our fundamental beliefs about childhood, innocence, and redemption. And they force us to ask the most disturbing question of all. If children this young can commit such heinous acts, what does that say about the true nature of humanity itself?